Hey everyone, Social Solipsist here for another episode of 52 and 52 Season 2. And this week I am taking a look at Spaera, which is a puzzle game in early access right now. I honestly don't remember how I got this game. It doesn't seem to have been purchased through Steam or through any Humble Bundle or anything like that, so maybe it was another bundle or something like that, but I don't recall. But it's been sitting in my library actually not that long, and I thought I'd give it a try because a puzzle game sounded like what I needed this week. Spaera, I may be butchering that name. There's no indication of how it's actually pronounced, so, give it a go however you like, I suppose. It is a puzzle game that mixes some elements of both Tetris and Match 3. Unlike Tetris, it doesn't use all the same size blocks. Some of them are threes, some of them are fours, and some of them are fives. They come in a number of different orientations, and they have there's a few special blocks that also get incorporated. But to be perfectly honest, I don't understand what all of the special blocks do, so, we'll get to that in a minute. Again, like I said, it incorporates some aspects of both Tetris and Match 3, but the main additional mechanic that they've added or changed from your typical game in that genre is adding characters with special abilities. This isn't really a new thing. It's quite an old thing, in fact. The most obvious connection to make or comparison to make would be to Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which, if you don't know what that game is, that is an excellent example of how to do a head-to-head puzzler that adds a lot of depth to the puzzle with characters and abilities and things like that. So with that in mind, let's get into it a little bit. The art is very interesting. It's got some interesting and nice art. Generally speaking, everything looks, I wouldn't say particularly unique in terms of the art style, but it's nice enough and not so, it's not too reminiscent of any other properties, or nor does it get too generic and just generic fantasy whatever thing going on. Admittedly, it's a little unclear as to who these characters are, why they're here, what their motivations are, what the whole point of them battling it out is, but that's a separate argument entirely. In addition to the art, which again I think is pretty well done, both in the characters and the background art, and even a lot of the UI elements, the music is also fairly good. I was pleasantly surprised at the variety of music that was playing in the background in the game, also in the menus and things like that. There's certainly a number of tracks that, while not incredible standouts, were good enough that I was, pleased with what I was hearing. And that's sort of odd because, by comparison, the sound effects that are used in the game are some of the worst I've ever heard. Like, unbelievably poor quality. Sound like somebody said, we need to keep this game under a certain size. Can you bit crush this to death so that it has no sound fidelity left over at all? These are not sound effects I would put in my, in the cheapest, most poorly put together mobile game. That's how poor some of these sound effects are. And it's really, really weird when you hear this, this nicely composed music in the background, and then you've got these horrible, ugly sound effects coming through your speakers at the same time every time you set up a set or use a special block or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty weird. Again, it's in early access, so that there's a decent chance they might fix that by the final release. But they don't give a whole lot of indication on, at a cursory look at the early access info, they don't give a whole lot of indication as to exactly what they're planning to do. Nor would I necessarily expect that. But, it's enough that it would leave a little room for concern, at the very least, if they, left it. Like, it's so awful, it seems worthy of note, as if, the developer ought to write, when you start the game, there should be a text box that says, "Hey, please forgive the terrible sound effects." They're that bad. But anyway, moving on from that. Like I said, this does mix some of the Tetris and Match 3 stuff. And an unfortunate side effect of that is that some of the internal logic is a little bit gray, in terms of determining exactly when blocks are broken and when they fall. I'm not the hugest fan of... I really love puzzle games, but Tetris has never been my favorite thing. And Tetris has its own flavor of weird logic, but for block movement. But at the end of the day, it's consistent. I didn't play a huge amount of it, and I can't say I studied this really, really intently. But on the whole, it seemed inconsistent enough to me that it bothered me a little bit. I never, I gave it my best go, but at the end of the day, I was, taking my best guess of what the block I was dropping was actually going to do in terms of interactions with the other blocks. There's 2 or 3 of those special type blocks, like I was saying, but it's not 100% clear exactly how they operate. And that also gets into a larger problem of there being no tutorial or anywhere to any sort of documentation to really look up things like the block logic, the special blocks, or what any of the character's special abilities do. There's the main menu has the settings and then 3 modes. There's online, story, which is just offline, and versus, which I presume is local multiplayer. I didn't try it, I didn't even click it, so I don't know, but I assume that that's the case. But the fact that there's no option to look up abilities or any of that stuff is kind of a big oversight. Hopefully that'll be something that gets fixed once they put the game into a newer release. I think it's in like version 0.9 something or other like that, so it's obviously, I would think that means it's close to full release, but there seems to be a lot of stuff that they need to work on. In that same vein, there's no voicing or anything like that, not even, just guttural vocalizations from any of the characters or anything like that. And they do, the art, like I said, is pretty good, and they even add animations for good strikes or getting hit by the other player or something like that. But the lack of any sort of accompanying sound effect or line said or something like that is, admittedly a stylistic choice, but I think it would benefit the game as a whole. And I guess the final thing is sort of an overall lack of polish on the UI and a lot of the text stuff, especially in the menus. Again, early access could change with time, but as it is right now, it's like, I don't know what engine this game is made in, but it looks like they used, default fonts, default menu layouts and stuff like that. A lot of the internal menus, when the splash screen comes up at the end of the match and you see this like very clearly like default font type of thing, it definitely, no matter the size of your team, that's sort of inexcusable in terms of making your game look like a polished product. I don't care if this is one guy, like what little tiny amount of game development I've done, I know how easy it is to change something like that. So seeing that sort of thing, that sort of lack of polish on some fairly basic elements is a little surprising as well, and hopefully will also get fixed once it comes into full release. So yeah, on the whole, I mean, I wasn't displeased with it. I think there's a lot of ways it needs to be improved, but at the end of the day, as long as they make a lot of those improvements, those fairly small things for the large part, I think that this could be a good little puzzle game. Again, Super Puzzle Fighter Turbo-esque. And I'd love to have more of those, because there's a lot of crappy puzzle games out there, and I'm always looking for a new good one to waste some time with, I should say. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about the game. Looking forward to seeing what happens to it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I've been the Social Solipsist. This has been 52 and 52 Season 2, and I will see you guys next time.